Can we reduce aggression? Well, researchers are trying to address this question. We have identified things that don't work, and we're getting some promising results indicating some strategies that might bring on some reductive effects. So let's start with something that definitely does not work. All right, there are many things that do not work, but let's start with one that definitely does not work, especially since it's highlighted in the textbook I use for class. And that always helps when students can also read about it in the textbook too. And so one thing that does not work is this idea of catharsis. You might have heard this term before. Catharsis is kind of a release, a venting of aggression. And so there's this thing called the Catharsis Hypothesis. And the idea of catharsis, that you can trace that way back to Freud. You know, our buddy Freud, who was not actually a psychologist, but everybody always thinks he was a psychologist because he was historically influential and he was also very problematic. And we wish that they knew some of the other big names in psychology instead of Freud. All right, so Freud believed in this idea of catharsis, that if you could let your negative, forbidden impulses out, that would be good for you in some way. And so the catharsis hypothesis is the idea that engaging in aggressive behavior, go ahead and let it out. Engage in your aggressive behavior will reduce it overall. The idea is letting off steam. This is one that I will even see when I worked in hospitals, psychiatric hospitals. I worked on various psychiatric hospitals when I was applying to graduate school, and then when I was in graduate school, I also had some positions in psychiatric hospitals. And every once in a while, we would get like a guest therapist or something like that coming by to do group therapy because somebody was out sick or on vacation. And they would mention catharsis. And those of us who knew better would kind of tense up and be like, no, they're not doing it. They're not doing it. They're not doing it. Because if they have lots of the kids on the unit, lots of the kids in the psych hospital, they had problems with anger and aggression. A lot of times they had gotten in trouble at school or something like that. And they were aggressive at school. And so they said, okay, you have to go work that out at the psychiatric facility. And so some counselor, some social worker, whoever was coming in, some therapist, they'd say, okay, you know what you can do? Just punch a pillow. But when you get angry, don't punch a person, punch a pillow. And then that way you don't hurt anybody. And we're all like, no, do not punch the pillow. Because we know the research showing that this does not reduce aggression. This idea, punching a punching bag, punching a pillow, going out and letting out your aggression, taking a baseball bat to a bunch of garbage in the backyard. I can see how it's a tempting idea. You've got aggression. Go ahead and let it out on something where it doesn't actually hurt it, and then you're going to reduce the aggression overall, right? That's not what the research supports. All right, so an early study did show that compared to control participants allowed to bang on nails with a hammer were significantly more hostile to a Confederate. In a more recent study, participants were insulted, and participants allowed to hit a punching bag were more aggressive to the Confederate relative to participants who sat quietly for 2 minutes. What's going on here? Why would you be more aggressive after you got to vent your aggression? You got to engage in catharsis, which is supposed to be beneficial. Why would you be more aggressive? Okay, catharsis feels good in the moment. It's like, yes, I feel a release. I got that out. But the feelings are temporary. They are transient. And the thing is, it feels good to engage in the aggression. It kind of reminds you like, yeah, this feels good. This feels exhilarating. So then in a future situation, you may engage in what essentially has been encouraged through these cathartic activities. So you are more aggressive later. And I have seen this, when I worked in those hospitals, the kids would come in and they're like, oh yeah, well my mom, my dad, they always tell me to just punch a pillow. I'm like, how's that working for you? I keep getting in fights at school. I'm like, yeah, I don't think punching the pillow does not seem to be what we need to do. Please don't tell people to punch pillows when they are feeling aggressive. And of course, we had one kid, he came in, he had a broken thumb, and we're like, okay, we're at this psych hospital. How'd you get admitted with a broken thumb? He's like, well, yeah, I was trying to do that thing where you punch the pillow. I missed the pillow and punched the wall and broke my thumb. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that one backfired. All right. So expressing aggression empowers people to be more, not less aggressive. So this does not work. Catharsis does not work. All right. Now, that's not to say, like, if you like punching a punching bag for exhilaration, you're working on boxing, boxing for exercise, boxing for sport. I'm not saying that, like, that's a bad thing for you, but don't think that that's going to reduce any aggressive tendencies or impulses or problem behaviors that you have. It will not. All right. So catharsis doesn't work. What could work? What might work? Well, we do have some evidence for cultures of peace and modeling forgiveness possibly being beneficial towards reducing aggression. All right, so there are cultures of aggression where it's cool, it's rewarded to be aggressive, but there are also cultures of relative peace where it is culturally acceptable and rewarded to be peaceful, non-aggressive. All right, those are just as effective as shaping behavior as the cultures of aggression. And there was one study, Bonta, 1997, identified 25 relatively peaceful societies that range across continents. And in those societies, you saw less aggression. And part of it was the whole culture valued peace and calm and not harming other people. It was like you got status not by being the toughest, but by being the calmest, the gentlest. And that seems to be beneficial here. All right, so each of these societies evolved its own distinctive ways to reduce and discourage conflict. So conflict was not considered acceptable. It was discouraged in different ways. And we also see modeling. All right, so children can learn aggression through modeling. They can also learn peaceful, non-aggressive behavior through modeling. All right, so if you want to have children who are not aggressive, behave in a non-aggressive manner so that they will model you. Have them hang around with other adults who are not aggressive and not modeling aggression. And, all right, so have we fixed aggression today? No, of course we haven't. All right, these are promising areas of research. We are doing more research. We are developing programs and testing them out. All right, but these seem to be the areas of promise. Exhibiting behavior that's not aggressive, that you want to be modeled, and having a culture that values and rewards peaceful, non-aggressive behavior. All right. In a few years, maybe we'll have more findings to discuss. That's what we have now. This does end the videos for the chapter on aggression. All right, next videos for this class will be about something most students are very interested in, interpersonal attraction and relationships. So students can possibly learn more about their own relationships or maybe their friends' relationships.